Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar, in which I will be speaking with three fabulous authors about their new young adult novels. I am Ronny Khuri, a senior editor at Booklist. My pronouns are he and him. And before we begin, I will go over some technical details, a little bit of housekeeping. If you're in the audience, you are in listen-only mode, but we definitely welcome any questions that you may have. So if you look to the bottom of your Zoom screen, you'll find a toolbar with a button for Q&A. If you have a question, if you need technical assistance, just click Q&A and type your message into the box that pops up. We at Booklist will do our best to respond to all of the tech-related questions, and we can pass along all other questions to the panelists, and they'll be able to follow up with you after the webinar. We also offer closed captioning on this webinar. So to enable or disable captions on your screen, you can go back to that toolbar at the bottom of your Zoom screen and look for and click the captions icon. From there, you can select show or hide captions from the menu that appears. If you choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting caption settings. And finally, we obviously expect everyone to maintain a respectful atmosphere, and anyone who violates this standard may be immediately removed. But let us move on to the wonderful program that we have for today, and we will begin with some introductions to our panelists. First up, we have Jumata Emill, is a journalist who has covered crime and local politics in Mississippi and parts of Louisiana. He earned his BA in Mass Communications from Southern University and A&M College. He is a Pitch Wars alum and a member of the Crime Writers of Color. When he's not writing about murderous teens, he's watching and obsessively tweeting about every franchise of The Real Housewives. Of course. Jumata lives in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and is the author of The Black Queen and now Wander in the Dark, which is the one we'll be talking about today. We also have Kim Johnson. Kim held leadership positions in social justice organizations as a teen and in college, and is now an author and educator. Kim's best-selling novel, This Is My America, won numerous accolades, including the Pacific Northwest Book Award and Malka Penn Human Rights Award for Children's Literature. Her second novel, Invisible Sun, is another thriller ripped from the headlines. Both novels were selected as NPR Best Books, and today she will be discussing The Color of a Lie, which is her first historical thriller. And finally, we have LaDarrion Williams, a Los Angeles-based playwright, filmmaker, author, and screenwriter whose goal is to cultivate a new era of Black fantasy, providing space and agency for Black characters and stories in a new, fresh, and fantastical way. He is currently a resident playwright / co-creator of the Black Creators Collective, where his play Umoja made its West Coast premiere in January 2022, and produced North Hollywood's first Black Playwrights Festival at the Waco Theater Center. Blood at the Root is his first novel, just came out yesterday. And his viral and award-winning short film based on the same concept is currently on YouTube and Amazon Prime, and I highly recommend you check that out. So thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate it. And just to kick things off, Kim, I'm going to start with you on this one. But for those in the audience unfamiliar, can you start by giving just a general introduction to your new book, The Color of a Lie?
Yeah, thank you, Ronny. Thanks everyone for tuning in. So The Color of the Lie is a novel that weaves together sort of real historical events in a sort of fictional tale set in 1955 about a Black family that passes for white and moves to a whites-only town in Levittown, Pennsylvania, a real community. The story has Calvin really caught between two worlds. The white community that he is passing, and 11 miles away, the Black community where his brother runs a musical school for Black foster youth. And he's really trying to navigate the decisions that his parents made, but it becomes harder and harder for him to really want to be a part of passing, especially when he unravels some dark secrets. So it's my typical, there's always a thriller element to it in my story. So I'm really excited for its release.
Thank you very much. Jumata, let's do you next. Tell us about Wander in the Dark.
Yeah, sure. Wonder in the Dark is the story of estranged half-brothers Amir and Marcel Trudeau, who live in New Orleans, and the boys share a father. And on the night of Marcel's 16th birthday, which is also the last day of Mardi Gras, which we call Fat Tuesday, Amir attends his birthday party, and Marcel is shocked by this. But the only reason Amir attends is because he actually wants to hook up with Marcel's best friend, which is a girl named Chloe. They hang out for that night, and when Amir goes to sleep on her sofa and wakes up in the middle of the night, he finds her stabbed to death upstairs in her bedroom. He flees and becomes the main suspect, obviously, in her murder. And Marcel, for a reason I can't reveal, knows that his brother is innocent and decides to try to find out who really killed Chloe in order to clear his brother's name. And Marcel also sees this as a way to try to fix their fractured dynamic and their kind of mixed up family. And so the boys kind of go into, survival mode of trying to figure out what's happening at this very elite private school that they both attend. And there's just a lot of danger and there's a whole bunch of messy family drama.
Amazing, thank you. LaDarrion, tell us what's all the hype about? Tell us about Blood at the Root.
Yeah, Blood at the Root is a young adult fantasy, contemporary fantasy, about a Black kid named Malik Barron, who is from Helena, Alabama, my hometown actually. And he is blessed with ancestral magic. And, on the night of the 4th of July, on his seventh year of living on this earth, his mother is attacked by these mysterious figures, and his magic manifests and she ends up disappearing mysteriously. So he has to go throughout the world for the next 10 years up until his 17th birthday, having questions about his magic. Where did it come from? Obviously, where his mother disappeared to, and also he has to rescue his foster brother Tay from an abusive foster family, and some things go awry, and his magic, you know, goes it becomes uncontrollable, and he and his younger brother has to flee Alabama to start a new life. But his younger brother, has a diabetic sugar attack, and now Malik is stuck trying to help him, and he is greeted by this mysterious Haitian deity, and he informs Malik that he has an estranged grandmother in Louisiana that wants to meet him. And so Malik now has to go there because he wants to, seek the answers about his mother's mysterious disappearance. But while he's there meeting his grandmother, he also gets accepted into a magical HBCU called Cayman University. And now he must go there because he finds out that his mother attended there and she never told him. So now he must go there to investigate the professors, the students, because somebody there may or may not have something to do with her mysterious disappearance. So it's Black, it's magical, it's based in the South. It is on the precipice of hoodoo and voodoo faith, and it's just about this Black boy coming to terms with his magics.
Awesome, thank you. LaDarrion, I'm going to stay with you as we move on to the next question, which is generally, it'll be for everybody, just kind of how you came to this project. But LaDarrion, I know for you in particular, uh, I want to say like this may not be a book that would have been even considered not that long ago by like major publishers, but people were clamoring for it, right? That's like a big part of your journey. So tell us about just kind of that journey from seeing the need for this book to
Yeah.
yesterday.
So it's funny. So Blood at the Root wasn't intended to be a novel. I wrote it as a TV series. So I wrote the pilot script back in 2020. It was, obviously it was a lot going on with a global pandemic and civil unrest. And so I was in a righteous rage, I like to say, because I wanted to see something different. I wanted to escape, because I believe that's what fantasies should be. And so I just remembered, when I was in high school, it was Twilight and Hunger Games and Divergent. I remember you had to go to the midnight premiere, so you had to ask your mom or parents, "Hey, can I sneak out to go to the movies for the midnight premiere for these movies?" And I remember growing up during that boom, but I never really got to see, especially like a Black kid from like the South with a Southern twang who had magic and who was the main character. And if they were in those movies or those stories, they were only there as the sidekick, or they were only killed to help propel the white main characters forward. And I kind of got tired of that. And so in 2020, I was just like, I'm a writer, so obviously I want to write something Black and fantastical. Let me put pen to paper. So I wrote Blood at the Root as a TV pilot, because it started off as a series of tweets, that I randomly tweeted. I said, "What if Harry Potter went to an HBCU?" And people were like, "Oh my gosh, you got to make that. Please go out and film." And I'm like, "It's the global pandemic. We can barely get hand sanitizer. I can't go out and shoot a whole pilot." But people started donating, and people were like, "We want to see the story come to life." And so I called my friends up. I was like, "Hey, y'all want to go out and shoot a short film? I know it's the global pandemic. I promise we'll be safe." And so my friends, they were like, "Let's do it." So we shot the short film guerrilla style all over LA. We snuck onto UCLA campus to kind of cheat it as the magical college. And that's when it like really started growing and becoming big. And I was just like, "Oh, this is okay. This is something." And I thought Hollywood was going to come calling. They didn't, obviously. And I was just like, I have to pivot because this story is so important. So I was going to self-publish it. And as I was getting ready to self-publish it, my friend at the time was like, "You need to traditionally publish this novel, because we need this." And it's so good to see young Black boys as the main character in an YA fantasy. So I was like, okay. So obviously, I went out for agents and got signed by Peter Knapp. Shout out to him, the Titan. And we sold the book to Penguin Random House in a 3-book deal, January 19th, 2023. And people have been seeing this story from the inception to the short film to a book, and now it's out in the world. So that's how I kind of came up with, Blood at the Root. It was supposed to be a TV show, but it's a book. And now we're pivoting back to the TV show version.
Thank you. I was so glad to hear that it started out that way, because when I was reading it, not the one thing, but one of the things that was on my mind was like, this is so cinematic. Like why is this feels like it could be a film. So hopefully Hollywood gets the picture now and comes calling soon.
Yeah, it's a lot going on in Hollywood. I hope they do too, because they're in reboot. They just love some reboots, and I'm just like, can we please get some original ideas?
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's right
so
here.
we're
It's right here.
hoping. Yeah.
Kim, let's go to you. This is your third novel. And you've kind of, I mean, at this point, you're well established with that kind of social justice thriller. I hate the word brand, but forgive me for saying that. I'm curious if that's something like as a brand, but something you set out to like establish for yourself, and kind of what's your process for picking the next subject or topic that you want to explore?
Yeah, I mean, I I would never want it to only be my brand because as a creator, I don't want to be confined by certain areas, but I do write with calling and purpose, and social justice issues are always heavy on my heart, and I seek out a lot, and I have been engaged in a lot of activities as a young person through that, mentoring a lot of youth. And so for me, it's about societal issues. I want to talk about things happening in society, and the ones that are near and dear to me are things that actually are social justice oriented, and specifically the experiences of Black young people navigating the world. And so that's really where a lot of my stories come from. They come from a calling, they come from like a deep pulling that I can't necessarily explain once a story sort of starts to come to me. And because my sort of first love of reading was thrillers and mysteries, I really sort of merged the things that I loved reading with the things that I'm actually incredibly passionate about in the work that I do to sort of create this environment of writing social justice thrillers. And, for me, for this particular story, the way it came to me, it didn't actually come to me historical. at first. It really actually came to me. It was a really present day story where there was a young girl whose mother disappeared, and she needed to go unpack her family's history and go on a trip. And she discovered a lot of different things about about her family with a big secret. And as I wrote that, I'm a big researcher in all of my work. Love nonfiction, love looking at things that have happened in the past or current. And when it first was approached to me, I'm like, wow, the story is great, but I feel like it's the story in the past that really wants to be told. And I was like, please, I'm not writing historical. Like, that is too much work. There's no way. I'm just learning how to write. Like, I can never tackle it. And it kept kind of presenting itself to me. And so once I gave my space for it, the story just came to me. And there's so many elements that I feel like in the way a lot of my stories sort of like fit itself together. And so, that's where a lot of my stories come from, that I always want to push myself. So I push myself writing historical, and anything else I write in the future, I don't know. It could be, I won't say it'll be fantasy. Maybe it will. I don't know. I like magic though. When you're talking about the magic, LaDarrion, I was really feeling that. So
I appreciate that. I definitely don't want to put you in a box or anything like that. Jumata, you are on your second book. I do get the sense that like murdering teens is kind of your jam in a way, not for lack of a better way of putting it. At least so far. Other than that thread, though, putting that aside, like what drives your creativity, and what takes you to the next project, and specifically what brought you to Wander in the Dark?
And it's just kind of it's really a crazy question, because for me it's so random, like kind of where I get my story ideas from. I know with Wonder in the Dark, Wonder in the Dark was the book I actually wanted to write, always wanted to write, even before I wrote The Black Queen. And I kind of wrote The Black Queen because I knew, like, girls were readers of fiction. I kind of do a girl-centric story, and it kind of came to me in a random way, like with one of my coworkers was having a conversation, and they had like this whole like convoluted way that they selected homecoming queen. They always tried to pick a Black girl and a white girl. And I was like, oh, this is weird. So I kind of just built a story around that. But like LaDarrion, like I always wanted to have a story where the Black boy kind of gets to be at the center of the story, and not only just being the stereotypical role of, like, most times in thrillers, Black boys are like the innocent suspect. Well, yeah, we can have one that be the innocent suspect, but I also wanted them to be able to save themselves, and I have to be saved, someone to come and save them. And that's something that I always wanted. And like Kim, I used to love thrillers and mysteries. I grew up reading Nancy Drew, the Hardy Boys, and like Encyclopedia Brown. But we were just not in that space. And for me, it's always, and I've said this many times before, that it always strikes me as so insanely crazy that we do not have more BIPOC authors in the YA mystery and thriller space, when the criminal justice system affects us very differently than it affects white people in this country. And so you have a scenario right there that's ripe for characters who probably need to take justice in their own hands, because they're going to be unfairly treated, whether they are the victims or the suspects within crimes. And so with Wonder in the Dark, it was really funny, because I think it might have been in copy editing, or maybe like I was doing a draft of The Black Queen. And at the time, Netflix had put on all of the episodes of this old like half UPN comedy called Half and Half. It was like one of my favorite shows. I used to love the show. It starred like Essence Atkins, and I think the girl name is Rachel True from The Craft, the Black girl from The Craft. And they were like these estranged half sisters, and they had a father, and like Essence was like the more bougie younger sister, and the older sister was Rachel's character, and she wasn't like poor, but I mean by the standards of what her father achieved, she was poor by those standards. And I just really loved that show. And I remember I was watching it because I was binging the episodes in between, like doing revisions. And I was like, oh, this would be like a cool like concept to take. And if I added like a murder to it. And so kind of I knew that I wanted to do a story with like boys. And so I said, why don't I just make like two estranged. I kept the same concept of having two estranged half brothers. They share a father. I think in my story, since it said New Orleans, I said, well, I have the father be like this celebrity chef, kind of like an Emeril Lagasse, because New Orleans is all about food. And I would have the same concept to where he's married to the oldest son's mother first. He has an affair with the next son's mother, divorces her, gets married to Marcel's mom, and then shortly after that, he hits it big and become like this huge success. And then I can just like tie all this together into a murder. And I knew that I wanted to make one of the characters gay because I always tend to like to have at least one gay character in the story. And so it was also very important for me to have Marcel be kind of like the gay kid I wish I could have been at 16 in today's world, where him being gay is not really the issue. Like he's just gay. He just happens to like boys. Like there's all this other stuff that's going on. And I kind of just wanted to flip things on his head to be usually in stories like this, you know, Amir would have gotten the love interest, but I gave the love interest to his brother, his gay brother, because I also wanted to see a story where two Black boys get to fall in love. Because I always felt in YA, there seems to be this push, especially even in like LGBTQ plus literature, to where you have like these BIPOC characters, but they're always dating white characters. And one, it doesn't happen as often as YA likes to depict it. And then two, I want to see two Black boys fall in love. Like that, we are deserved to have that as well. Like it's because even when you do that, you're still centering whiteness in that story. And oftentimes those characters didn't feel like the Black characters in those stories don't feel like Black characters. They feel like Black characters in whiteface for me, because they don't even address or have issues that would come up in interracial dating in today's world. So it's still not even genuine. And so that's kind of like where all of that was going in my mind when I kind of crafted Wonder in the Dark in terms of all the things I kind of wanted to kind of address and kind of dive into with the story.
Thank you. We'll talk more about that kind of two character dynamic in a little bit, but yeah, that's a great setup. I'm going to shift to talking a little more about genre. We'll start broad and kind of narrow as we keep talking. But let me go back to LaDarrion on this one. Obviously, you're writing fantasy. I think magical HBCU might be the best two-word pitch I've ever heard. Like just real tight and real strong. And I'll say one of my favorite sections in the book is that first entrance into Cayman, where I appreciated that you really slowed down and took your time to just like look around and explore it. And there's magic happening, but really like there was this sense of magic for me as a reader because I was like, I've never seen this before in a book. And that was magic alone. Forget about the people doing real magic. But tell us about Cayman, how you developed that school, and the magic system behind it as well, because it's really cool.
Yeah. So when I graduated high school, I didn't go to an HBCU, and it's one of my biggest regrets. I went to a PWI, and that PWI trauma is real. I did two years at a small college in Tennessee. I was a theater major, so God bless the Black theater majors who the slaves roles weren't enough because that's the only roles they gave us were the slave roles in Big River. But amen, we're healed. So I wanted to kind of create a school that that we get to learn about Black history. We get to learn about just seeing Black kids just like doing magic, because my sister went to Alabama State University. And so she always talked about how, her HBC experience was like very magical. It was so awesome. So I was like, oh, okay. Well, HBCU, we all grew up watching, like Drumline and Stump the Yard. But I was like, well, what if I add all of that, but place it at a college campus, and specifically a historical Black college and university. And so I came up with Cayman University. And the word Cayman comes from like, the Haitian Revolution. I was like, there is some historical context there as well, because some of the kids may or may not, get the time travel back to the Haitian Revolution, because I didn't get to learn about it. I didn't even know it existed really until like in my 20s. Shout out to the Alabama school system. Because they, that's a revolution that they don't want to talk, because it inspired a lot in insurrections. Like, they talk about how it really inspired like the rebellions, like in the Carolinas, Nat Turner, like, and all the way down to like Alabama and Louisiana, and also it inspired the civil rights. And I was just like, that is so cool. And I think it's so beautiful for Black kids to learn that. And so yeah, you get to go to this college I created like that, and like, you get to see these kids practicing voodoo and hoodoo magic, because when I love American Horror Story Coven. It's the best season. I'm sorry, it's the best season because Angela Bassett. But I only loved it because of Angela Bassett, because she played Marie Laveau. But as I went back and rewatched it, I was like, wait a minute, something's not right here. Because I was like, one, she should have been Supreme, because she was Marie Laveau. She's the voodoo queen of Louisiana. And two, I was like, why is a Haitian deity, one that got Papa Legba and Baron Semeni mixed up? And I was like, why is he snorting cocaine? Like, what is happening here? And it was because it was demonized, because Black spirituality has been demonized in Hollywood I mean, not even Hollywood, just since slavery. And so that has seeped into the Black Baptist culture, because you sometimes you do hear Black folks like, why do you want, like that devil worshiping, like witchcraft, blah, blah, blah. And I had an interesting conversation with my mom, because my mom was like, why do you always write about like magic and that devil worshiping? And I was like, I have to sit you down and let's have a history lesson right now. Because I was like, do you see that cinnamon broom that's hanging on your wall? Where do you think that come from? Why do you think our auntie used to sweep from the back of the house all the way to the front, all the way into the street? Where do you think that come from? And in the church, y'all used to be falling out and, being filled with the Holy Spirit. Where do you think that come from? That is hoodoo. That is spiritual practices. And so but that, because it's been demonized in literature and media, and since the beginning of time, since we've been here, so it's time to kind of flip it on its head. And I wanted that to be in the lens of a 17-year-old Black boy from Alabama who is blessed with hoodoo magic. And for the 3 books, he gets to go on this journey learning about his hoodoo ancestry, because it's beautiful and it's complex and it's vast. And the enslaved people, their customs and their religion was ripped away from them. And they had to rebuild it. And that's how hoodoo came to be. And it's infused in the Black church. It's infused in just the way we live in the South, like the remedies that your grandmother used to like do, like, put an onion under your feet, like, rub your chest, what, like Vicks Vapor Rub, but like that's hoodoo, like that comes from that. And so that's why I wanted to infuse that in my book, to showcase that it is beautiful and it is vast and it's magical and it's Blackness, because we praise Greek mythology, but we demonize hoodoo and Black spirituality. Because Greek mythology, they were doing it was a lot going on in Greek mythology. And I'm always interested why we learned about Greek mythology, but not voodoo and hoodoo ancestry. So that's why I infused it. I wanted my magic system to be Black and infused in Blackness. I didn't want the white aesthetic magic on it, and the whitewashed, because voodoo and hoodoo it's been whitewashed. Sometimes it's whitewashed, and so I wanted it to be infused in that. And so yeah, that's why I wrote, came in, and the magic system and all that.
That's awesome. Jumata, you gave a big thumbs down for American Horror Story. Do you have a rebuttal?
No, I just Kelvin is the worst. I'm just joking. But no, I'm not joking. But I hate, like, I honestly don't like American Horror Story, and I don't like witches. That, like, it was too much. Like, first of all, as a writer, it was like people had different powers every day. It's like there was no structure to it. It started off strong. I had the same issues that LaDarrion talked about. Like, why is it about the white witches stole the Black witches' magic, so then the white witches get to be supreme? Like, please. And like,
Okay.
I much prefer like witch stories that are about female empowerment and not about females acting like gay men and being bitchy. Like, that's why I didn't like her.
But Angela Bassett's Marie Laveau, like that was just epic though. Like her performance was epic in that show. Because I liked how she got to tell white people off. Like, and like, like, no, your magic was built off our backs. And I loved how she talked about, Salem, and how the white girls, the only reason why Tituba got captured and accused, because the white girls just wanted to go off in the woods and just have fun. And we all know what that means when they wanted to have fun. So Yeah, that's why. But I wanted it to be in the perspective of the Black, perspective of Marie Laveau, but I have my quarrels with Ryan Murphy. Amen. So.
Thank you for letting me put you on the spot there, Jumata. Uh, Kim, so you mentioned kind of ending up in historical territory. Um, and you also mentioned that you love nonfiction. I'm curious, just in general, what is it about fiction that makes you want to explore ideas through that lens? And kind of, I mean, you wrote this thriller, and I mean, it's like a textbook example of like a simmering kettle that's just you can feel the tension from page one and it just rises slowly throughout until it really just explodes. Like, how do you take a real, especially when you're working with historical, which is you're stuck with history. You have to use it like the way it went down. How do you craft such a meticulous thriller plot? Like, how do you put those two things together? It's really remarkable.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm hoping my audio cooperates. I'm working through it, y'all, but I hear captions. Oh, good. Okay. Well, hope it sticks together. Yeah, I find nonfiction and storytelling has really improved. I have felt like before, it was harder to find things that felt like a narrative, and I think nonfiction will be something in the future that I might really want to tackle. But because I'm writing for young adults, and there's so many audiences when I'm writing that I'm writing for. I have my main audience, my Black audience that I'm writing for, but there's all these other layers associated with it, and I want there to be more of a dipping into characters, and characters that have vast of array of experiences and arcs that they go through, and I really think that fiction helps move a story forward. And I really work hard in all of my work, even with the elements of the thrillers and some of those other pieces, to have people feel like if they were to look in any kind of either history book or turn the TV on, that they actually could feel like they could see a story that touched on a lot of those areas. And so I really do try to balance that, with my work. For because it was a historical thriller, and because there were these elements that I really wanted to ensure were sort of layered in the foundation of what was happening in the story, in selecting 1955 as a really critical marker of pre-civil rights era work that was occurring. I wanted to slow down the story a bit, but not in a way that pulls a reader. So I wrote the story much tighter than I typically write my stories. My stories are typically a 400-page book, and this time it was not a 400-page book, and I did that because I didn't want to overwhelm, especially for my young readers. Knowing that it would be historical, and then it being a long, heavy book, I just didn't feel like it would capture their attention, and so I actually utilized the fear that Calvin had around passing, of being discovered. And passing goes beyond race in my story. There are a lot of ways that people pass or are forced to pass. And I use that as a way to push the story forward. And so just the fear of having Calvin walk down the hallway for the first time in his all-white school, when he grew up in Chicago in an all-Black school, while people accepted him and saw him as Black, and then all of a sudden, everything that he knew about himself, his favorite music, his favorite, Jackie Robinson, athletes he'd want to talk about in his Black environment, to then move into Southern environment. Just that alone has a level of tension to me, is same as, running in the woods with someone chasing after you. And so, I really try to build those moments of, do they know? Do they not know? Will they be discovered? And then throw in the big pieces of the thriller, the actual sort of the thing that scares you in this story, to kind of pull the story along, and And lastly, I did that because I really wanted to give justice to the historical aspect of that time period and what was happening, and how people really, really feel and understand Calvin, and what he was experiencing in a story about passing that's very different than many stories about passing, which people choose to do in a way that Calvin did not choose to do. His parents chose and forced him to do that. So I wanted to sort of respect that piece.
Awesome. Yeah, for any, writers listening, it's a masterclass on pacing and structure. So yeah, I highly recommend it for that alone. Um, Jumata, let me come back to you, writing crime thrillers and also having worked as a journalist and a crime reporter. I just think that's fascinating that you come to it with some kind of behind the scenes knowledge. So talk about bringing that to writing fiction. And also, I'm just curious if there are any like common misconceptions or something like that that you're hoping to like address through your work since you sort of have that knowledge.
Well, yeah, that the police aren't the only ones that can investigate crime. I think that Law and Order and CSI and our like glorified cop praising shows have really brainwashed the public into thinking that only police officers can do this type of work. That even including myself until I became a crime reporter. And like, because people, even now you're people come to me and say, well, yeah, DNA evidence would have done this, and that. And I'm just like, people don't realize that DNA evidence never comes into play almost pretty much into a trial. Because you know why? Because most police departments do not have crime labs. They can go and analyze DNA right when a crime is happening, like on CSI. Maybe if you're in a big city and this is a high profile crime, but most police departments, especially in small towns, have to send all of their DNA evidence to a state crime lab. And guess what happens? It gets backed up. You see countless stories all the time about rape kits that are like 3 and 10 years behind, okay? So I think that it was really about dispelling that, even for me when I first started doing crime journalism, because I would come in and, interview police officers and be like, why can't I just run DNA evidence and figure out, this? And what I realized was that most crimes or initial arrests happen because police are out, like maybe talking to people, doing interviews, gathering evidence, stalking people's social media, like stalking people. I said, this is a thing that a teenager can do. Like teenagers can do this. And often in crimes involving young people, I feel like teenagers can do it better because they have a more front row seat. The issue you have is that how many people want to go and do police work though? Who wants to solve a crime? Like most teenagers are like, I don't have time to do this. Like, why? Let the police do their job, even adults. And so you have to have a situation or create a situation where a teenager would actually want to actively investigate a crime. And that's the thing. I just recently saw this movie, I think it was called Missing. It starred Nia Long and I think Stormy, I think of her last name. But it was so good because it was honestly, this is how a teenager could do this. Like they are very tech savvy. They know how to hack into things sometimes. And plus it was really great to see like this Black girl doing this. I think so often for me, writing in this space is about creating characters where Black kids get to be quote unquote the smartest kids in the room. And that's very important for them to have that. I know I wanted that as a kid, even though I came from a family that all of my aunts and uncles were college educated, I pretty much came from a middle class family. I had other examples to know that, oh, I can be whatever I want to be in this world. But I also come to realize that most Black kids do not have that. And oftentimes literature, movies, film, TV, it can be a doorway for a lot of kids to dream outside of where they are and dream to be bigger than what they are. And so it was very important to give them that, though. It's very easy to tell, white kids that you can be anything in this world when they can look out into the world and see themselves reflected in everything, in every walk of life. And for a lot of Black kids, all they see is a sports athlete and a rapper. And that's very limiting. And they need to see themselves in all walks of life. And they need to realize, too, that you are smart enough to solve crimes. Like the police aren't, they just get paid to do this. But you have all the tools, we all do actually, if we wanted to do it, to do it. And so that's really kind of a lot of the fun that I have with this, is getting to like add a lot of elements that I did as a journalist. Like I literally had to sit in a trial one time, and I realized how police use cell phone data to like track where people are. So when I put it in the Black Queen, that was literally all this information that I had saved and never knew I would use it again. And I just poured into those books. And it's very fun to do it. I kind of love doing it. I love going back to my reporters' notebooks and seeing like, oh, I remember like they kind of did, this was something that they'd use to like find out this person did that or whatever. So it's kind of been a fun ride. And I think that people love to kind of, I've always said that people love thrillers and mysteries because it gives people an ability to experience danger at a safe distance. And you also are reading a genre where at the end, I know I'm going to get answers. Because oftentimes in real life crime, in real life violence, in real life tragedies, you don't get the happily ever after. You don't get the answer. You're just left with all the questions. And so I kind of like being able to do that as well through my work.
That's awesome. Thanks for sharing. We're already getting close to the end almost. Let's talk about character. And let me start with Kim on this one. So Kim, in the story, Calvin is the focal piece of this historical scenario that's very important, and the activism around all of that. But he's also very much a teenage boy who really just wants to live his life. So there's these kind of two forces at work there. But what did you want to explore, putting the history aside, just Calvin as a character?
Yeah, I have a soon-to-be 17-year-old son, my oldest, and he's very much somebody who just wants to be left alone. He's a good kid. He's quiet. Doesn't say much. Is exploring, his character and who he wants to be. And so, for me, having my novels have a variety of representations has been really important to me. And so, for Calvin, he explores friendship, and he has two different kinds of sort of friendship sets and the ways that he connects with these sort of windows. And for me, it's also just about, when I was growing up, I used to hang with the boys a lot because I played sports. Like that was my thing. Like I'd be the only girl, at recess trying to play basketball with the boys. And so, having that representation of that boys playing and the different sort of relationships that are there, and how they sort of navigate those friendships. I also just wanted my main character to fall for a girl across town, another Black girl who's really smart and sharp and dynamic, and him having like falling in love for the first time in my story, and I love having those elements, and I think it's so important to have that exploration. So a lot of those pieces it's really important for me to include. To me, it's not just about a teaching moment in my work, like because I touch on societal issues that I want us to grapple with, I want us to explore, I want us to discover. Like that is core and important to me. But I also think that understanding the humanity and how connected we are, and how regardless of your background, there can be so many similarities that we experience as feeling rejection, feeling love, feeling unwanted, navigating, being a kid and your parents not sort of trusting you. So all of that, I really like to build in with my characters, and having a large cast of characters, so that, that sort of like interplay can occur.
Yeah, I love that. You and Jumata both being thriller writers, I feel like it's like you said, it's so important to keep the characters first. The other stuff is there, and it's adding to the tension, and it's creating. But first and foremost, it's a novel about people and families, and that really comes through, and that kind of whole package is a beautiful thing. LaDarrion, let me come to you. I want to talk about Malik, and I want to approach it through the lens of language. Because this is a book in first person, and I think my favorite part is Malik's voice, and the way you put it on the page. And I think it's one of the things that really makes the book kind of stand apart from everything else that's been available up till now. Um, the way I describe it is kind of unfiltered. He's Southern, he's Black, he uses slang or AAVE or however people end up labeling it. And he's so authentic. And I don't mean authentically Black, I mean like authentically teen and human. And usually in a fantasy book, like something magical happens and like, okay, they notice, move on. But Malik, his emotions are on his sleeve and he's like, what the F? Like he lets it rip and in the best possible way. Um, and I just love that so much. So can you talk about you can talk about him in general, but also just taking that approach to putting him on the page in that way.
Yeah, I think again it's one of those things where I grew up, I wanted to read a kid I wanted to read about a book about a black boy from the South with that twang, that talks just like me, especially when I get around my friends or my family. And Malik is born from that. He's from Alabama, so he's from Helena, Alabama, and a lot of people um say that like slang or AAVE is not it's something wrong with it. And it's like who said it's wrong? Like, I feel like the South, the way we speak and the way we, it's just so poetic. Like there's just so much poetry in the South. And I stand on the shoulders of like, August Wilson and Zora Neale Hurston and and Katori Hall and Terrell Allen McCraney, and the way they write Black Southern characters. Katori Hall, and even in P Valley, she talks about like the slanguage, right? And you hearing these beautiful, just the way they captured, the everyday, the language of the everyday people. I love the way August, he have his characters, go on a tangent, but it's just so much story and so much, it's just so jam-packed with so much poetry. And I wanted to infuse that in the mouth of a 17-year-old Black boy, because I'm also listening to the way kids talk. I have a 13-year-old nephew, and I'm hearing the way he talks with his friends. I'm hearing the way kids talking on social media, and sometimes I do feel like I'm like, well, why do teens in contemporary stories sound like they're in a Shakespearean play? I'm like, they sound like they got a credit score of 750 and they work for a corporate office. I'm like, no, teens are still talking, especially Black kids from the South. I went home one time and kids are still saying on God, bro, like on my mama, on this. And I'm like, wait, I remember saying that when I was in middle school, but it's still there. And so I wanted to infuse that in the book. I wanted to hear the isms, and I wanted to take off the talking, people say talking or what you talking about or what, like, and hearing that. And also um when they say it's wrong, when you hear people saying like, oh, that's grammatically not correct the way they speak, I'm like, you're talking about my mother, the way she talked, you're talking about my grandmother, my aunties, my uncles, and what they say is it's been true to me, and that's where I grew up. And it's so interesting going as a theater student, especially a Black theater kid, they try to, train that out of you, to speak in a very, in a vernacular that's very professional. And it's like, yeah, but like this 17-year-old Black kid. So I want people to crack open the book and they see, because somebody just tweeted me last night that Malik is in a car. He's trying to break into a car to steal so he can go save his little brother. And you see a pack of Swishers, Black and Miles, and you see AirPods, and you see a college, tassel dangling. And he said, oh, we know whose car this is, because if in the South, when you get into a car, you see a pack of Swishers, we know. And so it's so important for Black kids from the South, especially from the inner cities, to see themselves. And so that's how I kind of approach it. I approach it as a playwright, because as a playwright, we are listeners, and we want to capture the way people are talking in a very authentic and beautiful way. Because everybody has a different speech pattern, the way they talk, like, and that's fine too. But I just want to make sure that a kid like Malik, is not discounted, and his story doesn't matter because, oh, well, he says this way or he acts this way. It's like, no, because Malik is a kid in your classroom. He's a kid in your neighborhood, in your school, and you're going to discount him. You may never know that young Black boy has 1,001 stories to be told. And it's so important to not discount those kids. And so I wanted to infuse that through the mouth of Malik.
I love that. And I love that you kind of went against the grain and broke the rules. Because for me, I think it makes it more accessible
Yeah.
in the best way.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I mean, even last night at the book launch, this young black writer, he asked me, what is the biggest literary risk that you took? And I said, I think with the language. And he resonated that because he said I think he was from Georgia. He was like, I love the way you had Malik talk because he's like, he sounded just like me. And that's important. So he's like, I want to write that way now because it's just like he felt that it was okay. He was like, well, you did it, so I feel like it's okay. And the way, August did it, the way Zora Neale Hurston, the way she had her characters talk. In there, I was watching God, I was like, some people are like, I can't understand this, but I'm like, I can. I know my grandmother used to talk like that. My grandfather, my auntie still talk like that. So, I think that's just important. And apparently it's a literary risk, but I'm glad to take it, for the rest of my book. So
um, Jamato, still talking about character and how you all approached your characters. So I want to go back to Amir and Marcel and the choice to tell a thriller through two points of view. And I mean, they have this really complex dynamic between them and really their whole family. It's kind of it's a bigger picture than just them, but the socioeconomic tension at play there. There's just so much going on. Can you just kind of delve a little bit into it for us?
Yeah, sure. Well, like I said earlier, it's like Amir and Marcel are kind of two halves of my younger self, and where Amir has a lot of the anger and resentment I used to feel towards my father. I was also a child of divorce. My father was also like a womanizer and yada yada yada. And so I always had those feelings of abandonment that he had. I put those in Amir, and I made Marcel just like again, like I said, everything that I wanted to be when I was 16-year-old, to be able to be out, to be able to be confidently gay, and to be rich. Like that's what I wanted to be, and I wasn't. And so I just made him that person. And so it was just a really fun, this book was really, really personal because I remember during writing of this book, me and my father, I had like a blow up on my father because all of the feelings that I had in the past was coming back up as I was writing Amir's voice. And I was remembering like being angry at my dad and like why wasn't I not enough and feeling like my dad would make excuses and at the time I didn't have the forethought to say this, but my thing is I was just a child. I didn't ask to be brought into this world. You brought me here. You had the responsibility to make whatever sacrifices you need to do to always show up for me as the dad as I needed you to be. That's not my fault. That's your stuff. But stop putting it on me. And so often, the parents in this, they were just as much a part of this story, which is also not very common in YA. As the kids were, because so often parents make these decisions, and oftentimes it's very selfish for themselves. A lot of the parents in this book, they made selfish decisions because what was easier for them at the time without the thought of, well, this is how it's going to affect your children later. And so it was really fun to have Amir and Marcel really challenge the adults in their lives to be better people for them in order for them to have a better relationship. Because what happens is all of that tension that the adults had for each other, and rightfully so, the adults didn't make the great decisions in this, especially the father. It really kind of filtered down to the kids. And so a lot of the resentment that they had, Amir had his resentment, one towards his father and one towards Marcel, because he felt Marcel got the perfect life. Marcel got all of the stuff with their father, got all of the time with their father, and he was just he felt tossed to the side, by his father. And so it just really was important to me to really kind of work through my own. I probably needed to go to therapy, but I just kind of did it through this book and to work with my thing. And my father is he is such a great father now. And even the boy's father, he was two halves of my own father. I gave, the half that Amir had to deal with the resentment, the abandonment issues. That was who my father used to be. And with Marcel, he was very accepting of Marcel being gay was not an issue for their father. And that's who my father is now. My father became this person that it's just my biggest champion now. This is a man who used to be very homophobic, and now it's just like my biggest champion. And you better not say nothing about a gay person ever. And he's ready to go to bat and go to war. And it's just like, and all because I chose to exist and be myself and to stop apologizing for who I was. It forced my father to even be a better person. And so that's what I kind of wanted the boys to do for the adults of this book.
That's beautiful. I think the best thing I can say about this book is that you could take away all the murder and it would still be an incredibly rich, right?
It's really funny. Like I say this all the time because like at points of writing the book, I would get so caught up in the family drama that I was like, oh God, I gotta figure out who killed this girl. Like I gotta go back to this.
Maybe, yeah. Yeah, I mean it's truly a rich just family story on top of a really engaging murder mystery. We've only got a few minutes left, unfortunately. We could do this for hours, unquestionably. I think as a closer, I want to ask each of you, this is a thing I stole from authors Chris Barton and Jennifer Ziegler. They have a web series called This One's Dedicated To, where they ask authors to read their book's dedication and just give kind of a little backstory behind it. And it kind of reveals some things sometimes about the authors and their work. So let us start with Kim, I suppose, if you wouldn't mind reading your dedication and telling us a little bit.
Yeah, I have my dedication memorized because it's really short. To Wesley and Joelle, which are my kids, my son and my daughter, who watch me write all the time. And I see my youngest, she wants to be a writer. She writes her own stories now and actually narrates them. She records them and will play. The stories are very short though; they're like 2 minutes, but to her they're very very long. So yeah, I think it's to them and writing books that I wish that I had when I was growing up.
I love it. Thank you. Jumata, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure, no problem. This one is easy. I kind of talked about it already. It says, "This one is for you, Dad." I dedicated my first book to my mom. It was called The Black Queen, so I said she was my Black Queen. And so with this one, since it's so much about Black boys and fatherhood, I wanted it to dedicate it to him and really show and have a book where not only Black boys can be allowed to be sensitive and to be emotional. And I feel a lot of times we have to be hard. We're toxic masculinity, be hard, don't show emotion. And I just really wanted to have a book where two Black boys, yeah, there's some tension there and they have to deal with that, but they also get to just have emotion with their father and have their father be able to be emotional and sensitive with them and there be strength in that.
Awesome. Thank you. LaDarrion, bring us home.
Yeah, so my dedication is this is dedicated to the 17-year-old Black boy who the world told he doesn't have magic. Let me let you in on a little secret. You do. It is in your blood. It is nestled deep in your bones. It is in the very soil you walk on that's been blessed by the sweat and tears of your ancestors. Walk in it with pride. To Ashton, this is for you. I just dedicated this book to the 17-year-old Black boy who the world told that they don't have magic, because I just felt like Black boys don't get to have the epic magical adventures, the love stories. Sometimes they don't get to, like Jumata said, like they don't just really get to be vulnerable and soft, and they don't be afforded that opportunity for that. So I wanted to dedicate this book to that, and also to my nephew, who's a 13-year-old Black boy that's growing up right now. And I just wanted to make sure whoever picks this up and say this book is for the Black boys who just, who are magical, and they deserve to be the heroes of their own stories. So that's why I dedicated to them.
Perfect. Thank you all. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for the whole conversation. Again, there's so much more to these books too. Like we barely scratched the surface. So I hope everybody will check them out. LaDarrion's book came out yesterday. I think Kim's not till June. Is that right? Yep. And Jamada's been out
June 11th.
June 11th for Kim. Three books that you all need on your shelves, unquestionably. So thank you so much, authors, and sorry to say goodbye.
Thank you.
And you're welcome to turn off your cameras and I will do a little wrap up here. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's slide presentation, certificate of completion, and video recording. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones like those you see here. Staff training, in-services, local conference, Booklist can help. You can now request free copies of Booklist and Booklist Reader for upcoming staff training programs, so you can help the next generation of library workers become readers, advisory, and collection development superstars. Scan the QR code on the screen, visit our website, or email info@booklistonline.com for more details. Thank you for joining us for today's program. One more huge thank you to our panelists and to our sponsor, Random House Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar. See you next time.